I just woke up. It's I woke up at 4. It's now 4:26 and it's a Tuesday. I'm gonna be going into prayer for economy at 5 for our weekly prayer. So I woke up this morning and I'm not sure what I was dreaming, but as I woke up, I remembered that I've wanted to do a tribute to my late brother, Osfiso. I even have a title for it. Isifiso sempumelelo, tribute to my late brother, Sifiso Mpumelelo Mzolo. I have no idea what I was dreaming. I did have a dream about something that I can't remember now, but I woke up with just that memory that I've been wanting to do this tribute forever. And I wasn't sure whether I need to record it with my siblings or write an article, just a series of articles, because I have a lot to share. It's been a while, but it's one of those losses that I haven't been able to get over. In fact, one of the things that inspired me to do the Culture Shock series with all the leaders, my late brother is one of the reasons. I'm the biggest reason, but my brother is also one of my reasons. His journey, perhaps that's the reason I'm just not able to get over the loss, because culture shock. So this is the problem statement for culture shock. Leaders continuously encounter various forms of change. They undergo personal evolution, career transitions, and environmental shifts. In navigating these changes, leaders experience a form of culture shock, compelling them to either adapt and challenge the status quo or conform, potentially leading to negative outcomes such as regressing, redundancy, self-destruction. Now, it's a personal thing for me, this experience. And I know we haven't had good numbers with the series, and I'm thinking, oh, now we're recording. Maybe people are just thinking I'll catch up on the recording, or people are just not relating with the content. I've been having all these thoughts, and I wasn't sure what's happening, but this content is so important. Some of us, our journeys have been so complicated because some of us are, first generation graduates, first generation doing, being in this industry or this sector. Nobody at home understands this thing that you're doing. You're not leaving home, you're living far away from home. And some of us go through challenges and nobody understands those challenges. And I think one of the things that I'm hoping that the Culture Shock series will give us language for some of the challenges that we face. It will give us an opportunity to be aware, to be self-aware. What are you going through? What is happening with you? I'll give you an example of how these things work, and perhaps I'll use my brother and myself as an example. When my last professional job, I left it under 2 years of my contract. It was a senior scientist position. I worked with researchers, research nurses, HIV counselors, drivers. There's just a number of people that I worked with in my team, or the team that I was part of. And one of the challenges that I faced there were issues of ethics. One, I think the first thing, when I came into the organization, I discovered that my role was very key to maintain ethics, which were non-existent in the organization, and that I picked up the first week I came there. First week. So you can imagine my 2 years. I had a daughter during that time, which I left the office and went and had a Caesar section on her 2 weeks before my due date. People were so shocked and they were so, heartbroken that I was working. And then I took a bus, a minor bus. Those that are familiar with Durban, we used to have those minor buses in the surrounding suburbs of Durban. I'm not sure if they're still there, but I took a minor bus from the office straight to the hospital, and I gave birth. My husband was at work. My parents, my mom, and my other siblings were attending my younger sister's very first theater show. She was casted for the first time for that show, and they drove there to Pietermaritzburg to be with her. And I had to go for an emergency Caesar because I was bleeding. And the reason why I was bleeding, sorry if you're a man and you're watching this, because I was consistently under a lot of pressure. During that time, I also lost my brother. And during that time, we were planting a church with my husband. There were just so many things that were happening, and I had moved for the first time after my marriage, moved from home to live with my husband because I had gotten that job. So the first thing that I had to struggle with were value systems that were not, aligning with the organization that I was in. I had to deal with issues of ethics that were key in my role. I was a quality assurance, I worked there to maintain the integrity of the clinical trial we were running. I was senior, so it's not like I could hide behind anybody's back. It was just me. I faced for the first time diverse religions. Come on. It's monocultural churches in, back home. I don't have to deal with any other religion other than being me, being comfortable in my being a Christian situation, Very first time where I had to negotiate my behavior, my beliefs. First time having to be in a workplace where it's dominated or hosted by another culture. This is another nice language that I learned from our session last week. We're dealing with embracing multiculturalism in a professional space, in professional spaces. And one of the things that I learned, because I've always struggled with the idea that how is it that urbanization feels like westernization? It just feels like I need to give up my cultural background to assimilate a new culture altogether. And Robert taught us that each time in an urban place, there is a hosting culture. So perhaps the workplace, the likelihood of an African culture being the host is not necessarily, a familiar thing, because normally the employers belong to a different culture. So he let us understand that. So in this one, the Indian community was the hosting culture. So from your food, when we are having events at work, now this is me during that time. I wasn't used to very hot, spicy food because I had issues with ulcers. So each time there would be lunches, which it happened almost every week because of the work that I did. It's either There are meetings with external monitors. There are, lunches that are delivered, and they're all Indian food, and they're very hot. And I remember the first time having to eat just rice and a salad because I can't eat this curry that looks yummy, but I couldn't because I wasn't familiar with hot food and because of health reasons, which I grew out of, by the way. God healed me of that thing, so I can eat anything hot now. But from food, from the people you see in the corridors, from the how people dress, even when you wanna, I had a very nice relationship with another Indian colleague of mine. We were doing the same job, but we were in different clinical trials, and she came after me, and I had to orientate her because she was straight from university. And so we got to be close, and we were friends, and we would go every Friday to have, try out, food. Obviously, because the hosting culture is Indian, even the restaurants nearby, you will find that they are very pro-Indian, clients. So we would try out sandwiches, we would try out pastries, we would try out just anything and everything. And she was also Indian, so that didn't help either. So anyway, those were the good parts. But I had to struggle through that. My first colleague advice that I got, obviously I was clueless with some of the dealings that were happening. And then I have to mention the race, and it's not about racism, get my heart. But this is someone from another race telling me to be careful and not be clueless in this environment. That every communication, I need to back it up, send the email, but also send the email, save it for myself for later because I might need to defend myself. Which was very sad because I quickly learned that within a couple of weeks that she was so right. She was so right. I had to duplicate copies I made. I had to, CC myself to the personal email. When I left the organization, I had to pack all my evidence. Should I be contacted for investigation? I had to back myself up. That was a culture shock for me, and I did not survive. One of the things that I went on the video, how we introduce culture shock, when you go through those, it's the honeymoon stage, and then you begin to experience the culture shock, and then you reach a state where you can either sink or swim, and I sank. I'm telling you, I resigned before 2 years was up. After I lost my brother, I dealt with loss, and I couldn't fight anything else. I could not fight anything else. When I had to leave that job, this is the job that required me to be an hour early at work. I would get there. I started work at 7:30. I would get there at 6, and I would pray. I would pray for the organization. I would pray for myself to survive just that day, not to lose myself in the midst of all of this. I couldn't start a day without doing that, because if I did that, I wasn't going to survive the day. There were days where I would be so sleepy as if there was something wrong with me. Now that I'm studying psychology, I get what was happening to me. I get when you're experiencing incongruity, That was what I was experiencing. My values were not aligning with what I was doing. My environment was not allowing, was not aligning with who I was. You had to trust, you had to not trust anybody. And the month, I think my 30 days of notice were the worst in the organization because now I was aware of what I was dealing with, not just being aware because of suspicions and looking all the, people's, reading the patterns of people's conduct. Now I had facts, I had evidence, facts. So I would cry every day. And I would cry. I remember for my mom begging me not to resign, thinking about, young family. And I said, Mom. And that day, the Scorpions were really doing the work the most in South Africa. And I thought, Mom, if the Scorpions would come into this organization, if someone would say something, I'll be the first one to be called in because I'm signing off reports. I'm sending these reports to our funders. I'm sending those reports to our board of ethics. I'm going to be the first one to be called in here. And I don't know how will I defend myself. I didn't know. And I wept on the phone. I wept. I said, Mom, I'm just thinking if anything goes left here, I might go to jail here. And I wept. My brother did the same thing. My husband knew what I was going through. He never disputed. As much as now we look back, years later, we know it was a mistake for me to leave because the report that I handed over and I mapped possible ethical breaches that existed throughout the study, even before I came. I listed things. When I went back a few months later, because I always do that when I leave employment, I always go back. When I went back, the study had been closed, investigations had been started, and sites have been shut down. And I felt so good. It felt so good. I could have swam and waited for that day. I could have swum, but I didn't have courage to step up. That's adaptation that we're talking about, the intentionality of adaptation to new tiers of growth and environments. I could have made a huge leap in my career growth, and I regressed. That's why I'm doing the series. I think of leaders that could have thrived, but were thrown into situations where they couldn't thrive. We've had, now this is well structured, the series is well structured. We've had travel, accommodation, and gourmet experience. Let me just tell you, you will not, especially people from my culture, I don't know other cultures, how they struggle with these things, but as leaders, you have to be empowered to travel. You have to be, by all means necessary, whether it's for leisure or for work, you have to be comfortable with that. When we did this, I had in my head my first experience flying as it was my first time being in a senior position, and my first time, and I had to travel for a week, and we had to fly there. It was tricky. It was tricky. Let me tell you, when we got there, they were expecting doctors to come. And we didn't have courage to actually correct them and say, we're not doctors. I think it's because we were going for a course at a medical school. And anyway, just to cut the story short, I was left at the airport when we were returning because I just did not know the difference between departure time and boarding time. I got there and the gates were closed. So each time I think of that, I think of things like that. I've seen people um, not taking opportunities because it involved traveling a lot. I've had a job where I would travel to see clients and I would spend time, and those would be so amazing. But as a mom as well, it used to frustrate me. Can you believe what we do to ourselves? I'm thinking when I'm eating, are they eating? What are they eating? Uneni, what did she cook? Are they eating well? I'm supposed to be enjoying this traveling experience for work, and I'm busy thinking about my children. I'm making sure I'm not enjoying the leisure because it comes with leisure. It comes with fine dining. It comes with, experiences that you might not have a chance to have with your family. How do you overcome those things? How do you overcome these things? Okay, another classic one um, that I'm thinking of is in January. This January, friend, if you watch this, please, my friends that were traveling with us in January, this wonderful, wonderful executive, this wonderful, obviously, we're not in the context of work, but this is an executive in real life. And he was traumatized about the tip that we left for our waiter. I mean, a table full, we were like 3 couples. So that's 6 people. You're serving 6 people late at night. You are tired. You are tired, but that girl gave us such an incredible service. Besides, it was not an exaggerated tip. It was exaggerated because of the bill. 6 people that are very hungry, that are away from home. The bill was very high. So the 10% was high. And this man was like, what the heck are you guys doing? So much tip. And we had to educate, you know, that no, you don't detect the tip. It's 10% of what you've spent and why it is important to pay the tip. Uh, so when you travel as a leader, you get to learn these things. Who would tell you at home you need to tip unless you've been living in urban spaces where going to restaurants is a culture, is part of a lifestyle? If going to restaurant is a luxury for you, some things you just don't learn because you go once in a while. And this brother has been an executive for a long time. And I'm thinking people that have served him, oh my goodness, what have they, experienced with him? But I'm just talking about simple things. It's culture shock. That's how it is. These guys don't get paid a lot. So their salary comes from when they're servicing you. And not many of us understand that. We also had Umamwendi come in to help us integrate African cultural values to the Western culture. How many of us even think about that when you go into the systems, whether it's an economic system, it's a finance system, it's a marketplace system, there is a hosting culture there. I never thought of that. Okay, obviously we know, but we just view it as our colonialism situation, historical situation, but we don't realize that life has moved on and we have to adapt. And how do we integrate our backgrounds to the systems that we're now using? And some of our struggles, and we regress because we are just struggling to match the two. So when I started work, I made horrible financial decisions, and this session talks about some of the things that we just misunderstand and we misalign and we misinterpret. And Mamwend was helping us to see where we can actually merge these beliefs, our beliefs, things that are we how our homes function, so that when we have to go into banks, we understand how we are wired mentally and how we can receive information that is given to us and how we can trade fairly on a, on a fair kind of slate, and how organizations can actually help us understand, if a black professional comes into the bank and they've just landed there, a senior position, already in their minds, ooh, Lord Jesus, they want to change the lifestyle. They want, because now we've arrived, bruh. That's what we've been wanting, and we've arrived. And so our mindset, we think um, in a different way, and the world is working in a different way. And sometimes we just, like I'm saying, I'm telling you about this position. It was a senior position. I had tripled my pay. And oh man, I did struggle just adjusting from me being Mabongi who lived at home. Now I'm living in my own house. Now I've got, bills that are, new baby, new city, new platform, and, new church. Oh man, my financial life was a disaster with all that pay and thinking this should have been my freedom, but it wasn't. And now I'm only learning in this age what I could have done. And the series is meant to help those that are in the same situation as myself to do the same. And so if you've been through that, come through, share your stories with others. And let's, I'm even keen to do follow-ups with people. If you feel like you can relate to these things, please come through. Let's chat. Let's give people, leaders, a head start, so that they don't regress like we did, crash like we did, you know. Look at me now. I'm thinking of you guys. I should have been sleeping right now. Okay, I need to join prayer in a few minutes. And then we had from rural roots to academic excellence. I mean, how many people, how many of um, our people, when I say our people, I'm talking about our superstars that made it with distinctions from high school and went to university, and the culture shock happened and people crashed and they returned home without any qualification. How many of those do you know? People that even the teachers were rooting for them because they were the hope, the beacon of hope in their communities. Others didn't even have registration money, but teachers said, you know what, we're going to put money together and we're going to pay for this child to go because they're a beacon of hope, and they never made it. Can I tell you something? We had, when I was 2 years into completing my matric, two guys left my school and went to Cape Town. These were brilliant minds, brilliant minds. Anyway, I'm talking about people that were very good in maths and science, and they went to Cape Town. Do you know both of them came back? I'm trying to remember whether it's in the same year. Another one lost his mind, lost his marbles, had to go back, mental health issues, because they were not coping with the culture in the university. How can an A student, not for A student for just grade 12, A student throughout my life, and you tell me I fail a module, I fail like I wasn't in high school, like I wasn't in the classroom, I mean. People experience this and it's so painful. I experienced it myself. My first semester in Durban, it was as if I never went to class. And I cried to the Lord. I cried. I never understood it. I thought, okay, it's the environment where I was living. And I negotiated with my mom. Mom, I need to change where I'm living. I need to find, a place near to school and closer to school and, a commune with other students. And I did that. later became the best students for consecutive semesters, got awards for that. But what had happened if I hadn't intentionally resolved the issues that I had, I wouldn't have made it. I wouldn't have made it. And Dr. Sandile shares his story as well. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Brilliant. Just how he had to struggle with language, the environment, all of the things that he never thought would be a hurdle for him became a hurdle for him, and he had to find new strategies to survive. I love the story because many of our graduates, they start and they crash. And I was hoping that this story will be such an inspiration for parents, for mentors, for university staff members to support the students, because they are experiencing what we call a culture shock. That's why they're struggling. They're not foolish, they're not dumb, kaya. They are just experiencing what we call a culture shock. And with support, and I mean, universities are aware. I love the structures that have been put. It's just that without the language, they cannot necessarily say what they're struggling with, and they don't know. And so it's our duty to learn these things and give it word. Tell them when they come what they could possibly experience, and let them, learn strategies to overcome before then. Another session that we did was leveraging rural insights in corporate leadership. We had Ndumenze looking at his life and how he grew up, and some of the value system that he has put in place to use in corporate. He uses on an everyday corporate space. All of this. Can you imagine? You would think you need what you would learn in the university to survive in corporate. No, 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 no. Even the things that you learned before university could, you could have leverage. You could learn insights, you could learn wisdom from how you tended cows, you went to the river to fetch the water because you didn't have running water in your home. You can tap into that background and learn how you can function and be innovative in your space, in a corporate space as an executive. You can learn those things. You don't have to shut it out. I've heard leaders, attribute some of their some of their strategies, their leadership tactics, their leadership models, they attributed to how they were raised. And so it's just a matter of finding, being aware, self-aware who you are, your identity, your values, and what will make you thrive. How can you bring in what you already had into what you're learning and what you are experiencing? That's the being intentional about adaptation. And then we had Robert embracing multiculturalism in professional spaces. Brilliant, 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 absolutely brilliant presentation. And we're going to do a follow-up with him as well. I did a follow-up with Umdu as well, because he touched on things that were just mind-blowing. He brought faith, he brought his family values, he brought, some of what seems like struggles, but were strengths. That's my alarm for prayer. Now I need to go. Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening to this video. But the summary of it, culture shock is very personal for me. It's very personal. Like this coming one on Thursday is about exploring the dynamics of migration. Both of my kids, they're already talking about traveling the world. And I have no idea how to take that, because I've never dreamt of it myself. Because my thinking, I think of some of the struggles that foreign students face. I think of some of the struggles that foreign, personnel sometimes face, especially in my country. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I don't want my children to experience the same thing out there as much as I want them to go. It's their dream. So now I have to prepare myself. I need to empower myself as a parent to allow myself to dream the dreams I never had. You know, consider, what will it look like for Mabongi to be in another continent, in another country? So this one is yeah. I'm very excited. We're gonna be learning from people that have done it. They've studied in foreign countries. They've worked in foreign countries. They've traveled the world, and they know some of the challenges. They know some of the lessons. They've learned lessons, the do's and don'ts. They in fact they are gonna give us. Umfutsi is gonna give us strategies to help us to thrive when we have traveled. I mean, I think of people that have, this is another thing that I'll probably talk about when my brother moved. And I mean, anyway, it's a long story, but when he moved, his final move wasn't good. He had many things that just were not going well for him in his personal life, in his advancement, career-wise, and he passed on at that time where he was grappling with many things, who he was and what he wanted for the rest of his life, and whom to marry, things like that. And I attribute that to not thriving when you have migrated, when you've changed the environment, and when you fail to adapt to a new space. He was in a big sea, brilliant mind in a very, a bigger pond. And people that grow up in an environment where there are superstars struggle to swim with other brilliant minds, and they're not the only ones. Now they're just part of, when you experience that as an adult, it's quite stressful when others achieve what your environment believed that you should achieve that first and make those thrive first. And so my brother struggled. He really struggled. He was a successful coach. He had a team in under 12 that was very progressive from our hometown. They would go up to the nationals, and he will mentor these young boys. And when he changed, not only did he change career, his passions, he couldn't fulfill his passions in a new environment. He couldn't find a team. He couldn't find, he had to coach adults that were not, sportsmen. Those are just adults that were playing soccer because they loved it. They were not planning to have any career. And so he lost that. And anyway, so let's do migration, because I think it's important. How do you adapt? Tina sikhula abantu behamba beyosebenza eGoli. So all of that. How do people survive the migrations? People bafike babe surprised eGoli. Life is not the same as Durban. Apparently, the speed. What happens there, and how are those adaptations? Now, I'm talking about moves that are happening within the country, but how much more when you have to change, continents, or change, regions. What are some of the dynamics that you have to deal with and have to overcome? And so please join me for the Culture Shock series. Enjoy it. If you were misunderstanding what we were trying to achieve, please go back, think about what we have said, read our problem statement, see where you have experienced culture shock. Please let us know how you overcome as well. I would love to hear stories. We're not getting any feedback from this series for now, and I'm just wondering if people are getting the content that we're giving out. And we know that once we have achieved this, it will boost our academic performances if you're studying studying as an adult with children and marriage and all of these things. It could be tricky. So culture shock can help you. This series can help you adjust to that as well. So it would foster growth mindset. It would broaden your perspectives. It will improve your emotional stability. It will enhance resilience in managing and both academic and professional challenges. And so please join me every Thursday. I think we have 2 Thursdays remaining, 7 o'clock on Zoom, and let's continue to learn and grow leaders and have fun. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be out.